Jordan Peterson had an hour-long conversation with Dave Ramsey, and this clip is the most replayed part of that conversation, the most viral part, and Dave Ramsey was stunned silent and the audience was quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And so I'm glad to cover this type of content with you. If you're new to this channel, my name is Aaron. I do Christian commentary on culture. So if you like this stuff, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and let's get right into the video. We're picking it up at the 34:03 mark. The full link to the description is down in the description below. So let's get this going.
Mental health is not you. So you need to be well constituted psychophysiologically, right? Your body has to be in working order, and the different elements of your nervous system have to be integrated into something like a coherent and visionary whole. And that's you. But then, you need an intimate partner. And that has to be a dyadic relationship that's communicating well. And then that needs to be nested inside a family, and that needs to be nested inside a community, including a community of friends. And then that needs to be nested inside a town or a city and a state or a province and then a nation. And all of those things have to be working harmoniously together. And so if you're going to be sane, you have to be acceptable to, valued by, and in constant contact with a social group. And then you need to, if you're wise, select your social group carefully. I mean, this is why there were businessman organizations like the Rotary and the Kinsmen and so forth. And, we see their membership plummeting in recent years. But it was there because people were wise enough to understand that even if you had attained things, on your own as a solitary venture, an entrepreneur, that it was extremely useful to have a community around you.
It's not good that man be alone.
No. You look, here's how you stay sane. This is what sane means. Sane means that you are acceptable enough to other people so they tell you when you're stupid. Right, because if you have 20 people, well, that's exactly, you distribute the problem of your own sanity. That's right. Well, that's what marriage, in a huge part, the advantage of marriage is that your wife taps you back into position and vice versa. And all you have to do is be acceptable enough so she won't leave, and she'll continue to do that. Right. Right.
So I want to bring up 3 points here. He says that mental health is not you, the aspect of the social group, and to tell you it's not stupid. So let's start with mental health is not you. I think when people say it's not me, or they end up defending their mental health because it acts as an excuse for them to feel sad or not try to fix themselves or not have the personal responsibility to work their way out of some kind of depression or low mental health state. And he says that you need a social group. And he brings this hierarchy. He's done this in a number of his videos. And this is the second thing, is the social group. He said that there is an aspect that you have a self-perception of yourself. But you need a partner to tap you into place, as he said. And then you need a group of friends. And then that is nested in a family. And that's nested in a state, and so on and so forth. But I think one of those aspects, if we stretch out the definition of social group, at least the function of it, it's not just to tell you if you're being stupid, but in actuality, the group that you nest yourself in, I find, needs to find self-preservation as a group. So, for example, if you have a group of friends and you are acting like the crazy one in that group of friends, to preserve the group, needs to tell you you're stupid or eject you from that. Now, that's a group of friends. Now, let's take it smaller to just a marriage. If that marriage is to survive, one person's acting crazy, either adultery or just acting crazy or finances or whatever it is, that other person, for the preservation of it, needs to fix you or eject you, right, to preserve itself. But if we bring it from the friend group down to the spouse in a smaller level, or up to the state at a bigger level, the state now has to preserve itself. And at different levels of either state or friend group or your spouse, there is a different level of loyalty. Like with the spouse, there's the highest loyalty. With the friend group, there's a slightly higher, and with the state, not that high. Like the state, the government doesn't care about you. It's just really trying to preserve its state identity. And if you are being crazy, they're going to put you in prison. You know what I'm saying? Or deport you, or whatever it is. So It's that. It's more than just to tell you that you're stupid or being stupid to tap you into place, but it's the consequences of trying to find self-preservation for itself, the group as a whole, either with the state, with the friend group, or with the spouse or the married couple. But on top of that, I think it's even different, and if we could stretch it even further, that men and women make friend groups differently, because it's that center part. Women, in my opinion, right, before I get too sexist and you guys hit it in the comments, women can just sit around and talk. I have not found that about men. Like, men sometimes will sit down and talk, but I found that for myself, I need to get with other men who are going somewhere, or we need to do something, or we have an ambition, or like, if you want friendship, at least from a male perspective and maybe female perspective to an extent, but well, definitely to an extent of seeing the same value. This is echoes of C.S. Lewis. He said that to find friendship, you guys have to see the same thing and agree. Now, for men, I feel like you need to walk in the same way, but for women, I feel like you need to feel in the same way, or at least like have some kind of sympathy for each other. Anyway, that's just some of my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think down in the description below. There's a little more to this, actually. We're going to go into the freedom of speech in the marriage and then the state as far as preserving itself. So let's get right into it.
Well, every single one of us is so complicated that we can't regulate ourselves. Like, you'll fall apart on your weakest side. But if you have people around you who are bolstering you, and those would be genuine friends, those are people who are pleased when good things happen to you and commiserate with you when bad things happen to you, right? They're there they're there in good times and bad. And you know who your friends are, especially if you've gone through bad times. And it isn't that those friends in some ways are additions to your mental health. They are actually, without them, there's no way you can be mentally healthy. Any more than a kid with no friends can be a happy kid, right? The definition of a happy kid is one who's at the center of a well-functioning network of voluntary friends. There's no difference between that and setting up your life properly. That's why children set their lives up like that. They're doing that to practice becoming a fully functional adult. And so you need a network around you that's thriving and communicating. And, another thing to understand too is the mechanism of free speech is the process by which those social relationships maintain their integrity. So, in a marriage, if the principle of free speech doesn't apply in your marriage, it's doomed. Because you cannot discuss your actual problems and solve them. And then they just accrue, like the little dragon that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. They just accrue, and once there's enough of them, then you spend your fortune in divorce court. Right, so unless you can speak freely with your wife, and that means there's going to be some conflict, because free speech means conflict, because you're dealing with real problems. Unless that principle of free speech applies, the relationship will disintegrate. And that's the same at every level.
Yeah, so let me break down two things that he talked about here as far as free speech in particular. The first thing he was talking about was that you need healthy friends, to stay sane. It's a necessity in life. And two is the necessity of freedom of speech in your marriage or with your spouse. Now, first of all, I think as far as the friends go, I think he's a little too utilitarian for friends or a social group. He keeps on saying social group. He doesn't say friends. And I always point back to this analogy. I just never remember going to a theme park, which is supposedly the happiest place in the world, alone. You never do fun stuff alone. You always want people with you. Matter of fact, you could be in the worst places, worst conditions, like camping or some nonsense. Like camping's not fun, but you could be in the middle of nowhere in a room doing nothing. But as long as you're with your friends, you'll be all right. But you could be in the best place in the world riding roller coasters. If you're with no one, it's a miserable time. I just went to Las Vegas recently. I was by myself. I thought I was gonna have a friend with me. He didn't show up. I was by myself and had a miserable time. You could have a great time in Las Vegas, especially with one other person who's your friend. And it's one of those things that adds value to your life. Friendship does. And if you don't have it, it like removes value from your life. So that's the first thing. I think he's a little too utilitarian for my taste. I would like to see that values added in life when you have a social group of friends. And the fact is, you could never really have a social group of friends if you aren't either making it about them. If you're always making it about yourself, you're going to bring a group of friends or a group of people around only for the strict purpose for utility to serve your purposes, to tell you when you're messing up or whatever. That's not how you keep a group of friends. Actually, you're gonna drain them. You need to be able to serve them in such a way where they feel they're getting equal value from their relationship with you, and you're not just being some social leech on their neck. You know what I mean? Like that's one thing. The second thing, which I thought was very interesting, and I think I'd like to stretch this definition out a little more, was the necessity of freedom of speech inside of marriage. Now, I would like to add things to that, right? He said that you need the freedom of speech because you could work things out because things will happen. But I think I'd want to add two crucial elements to that. Number one is you need to add, along with freedom of speech, the safety and security that and stamp of the seal that neither person will leave. Okay, that's the first thing. Maybe that's intrinsic in the freedom of speech, right? Your freedom to speak without leaving. But I just want to make sure that that's there because people can speak freely and then still leave, right? They get angry. And the second thing to add to the necessity of freedom of speech, not just security that no one will leave, but also the intention to build a better relationship or to build a better them or better, that's the intention. Because you could want the need to speak freely and speak your mind, but if it comes out of venom and anger and it's just to tear down the other person, in my opinion, you should not say it because you do not have the right intentions for their well-being and to build anything up. You're just in that mode. You just want to destroy something. And trust me, you and I know that you get there and I get there too. And so we have to have those two things. We need to walk into freedom of speech inside a marriage with the security that we'll never leave and the intention that this is going to be a better marriage. You're going to be a better you after this conversation. I think that is what's necessary for a healthy marriage, utilizing freedom of speech because it needs to come within those two guardrails. Anyway, let's just keep this going. We'll play this last clip.
That's why free speech isn't a right given to you by the state. Free speech is the precondition for the stability of the state, and it has to stay the hell away from it, from interfering with that principle, or it will doom itself. Right? So that's why we think about it as a God-given right? It's outside. It's the process upon which the integrity of the state itself depends, no matter what level you're conceptualizing the state. Because your marriage is a tiny state. And it's the same with your family. And if the information is flowing freely, that's going to cause some conflict, obviously, because you're going to discuss difficult things. And you have to do that because life is difficult. And, a problem's going to come at you, at your family, and you guys aren't going to feel the same way about how to solve it. So then you have to have an argument about it. You have to exchange your opinions, and hopefully you do that in a way that helps you come up with a solution to the problem that's likely to work. And all that's dependent on free speech.
Now, that's the clip. That's the most viral clip. But I want to highlight something towards the end there I don't agree with, frankly, is that he said, and maybe he won't agree with it either. Maybe I'm just being too nuanced about it or too pointed. But he's saying how a problem will come at your family. Well, what I found typically is that problems arise within the family, from the family, that causes the family to shift. So I'm not sure if he intended like this, but this is just how I'm interpreting it, is that he's saying that a problem will come out from the outside into your family, presupposing that your family is perfect, that your family is always in love with each other and always perfect and all that stuff. That's not true, right? Family's crazy. And so, and one will just hate the brother or hate the mom and dad and all that kind of stuff or whatever. The mom parents will choose favorites or they'll split or whatever. These problems arise within the family, from the family. And the ability to solve that, especially within the family, is the necessity for love. Now, this scripture passage that I'm thinking about is usually just used in marriage, but it's actually needed at every level of those interactions, either with your spouse or with your friend group or with the state. I feel like this scripture passage is really important. This guiding philosophy from the Bible is important because of the other philosophy of sin, right? That problems arise within us. Like, we are not perfect. We are not the perfect people. We hold other people to a perfect standard, but we can't keep that standard of ourselves, right? We want other people to not be crazy and not bring drama into our lives and not be embellishing or not being overly reactive. We want other people to do that, but that's presupposing that we never do that. And I'm just going to be the first one to admit that I can't keep that up. I feel like the solution is not freedom of speech, but actually of love. And this is what the Bible would say. I would bring in this passage in particular, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 6. And it's typically used in a like marriage situation, but this is really important for any level. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. The truth is what we're trying to get to with the freedom of speech. We're trying to dissect what is true. However, to get there, we have to be patient and kind and loving and not proud. And we can't be pulling up the receipts from everybody, because we'll never get there, because we're then too hurt to then hear the truth. I think that's what's needed in this, because we need to feel like we are building up a state, a nation. We are building up our friend group. We're building up our relationship with our spouse, our marriage, and then ultimately we'd be building up ourselves. And that root is from love, and God is love, and that's how I get it from a Christian perspective. Anyway, I know you don't necessarily agree to that, but this is just my particular worldview and how I see it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Is love a necessity at every one of those levels, at your friend group, at your spouse, and at the state level? And is there anything else that we could turn to that is not love? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Check out this other video that Jordan Peterson did, an interview with Vivek Ramaswamy, in the description anywhere, somewhere around here. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you in the next video.